Once, in a world not so different from ours, there lived a very jolly but sometimes very grumpy Santa Claus. He had a long white beard, as you know, and a big round belly. But this year, he wasn't just checking his list of naughty and nice children. Oh no. He was looking at his list of naughty and nice elements. These were not your normal elements like gold or iron. These were strange, wibbly-wobbly elements with very silly names. There was Xanadia, which smelled like old socks, and Cesium, which bounced higher than a kangaroo on a trampoline. These elements were causing all sorts of mischief, and Santa had had enough. He gathered them all up one chilly Tuesday morning. There was Caterium, which kept changing color, and Quedalidium, which was terribly shy and kept hiding behind the other elements. Zoom just zoomed around making funny noises, while Quantumium kept disappearing and reappearing in Santa's hat. Quadrilateralium was stubbornly square, Cordium kept trying to type things, Quectoium was incredibly tiny, Zendeum was very glamorous, and Quadnilnilnilium was just, well, it was impossible to count. Santa looked at them, his eyebrows all bushy and cross. "You have been very naughty," he boomed, his voice echoing like thunder. "You need a timeout!" And with a great big of sparkly dust, he punished them. He didn't send them to bed without supper. No, that would be too easy. He locked them away in a big, shiny, magical box at the North Pole. He put a big ribbon on it and wrote, "Do not open until unity." The world felt the change right away. The periodic table, which is like a big family photo of all the elements, suddenly had two big holes in it. The letters Q and Z, who were in charge of those sections, were completely shocked. Their jaws dropped right off the chart. They had never seen anything like it. The other letters on the periodic table gathered around. Hydrogen floated over, looking worried. Oxygen took a deep breath, which it does a lot. "What happened?" they all whispered. Q and Z just pointed at the empty spaces, too stunned to even make a sound. It was a disaster. A catastrophe. A calamity. The world needs its elements, even the silly, misbehaving ones. Without them, things were just less fun. The bouncing was less bouncy, the colors were less colorful, and there was a distinct lack of old sock smell which some people, strangely enough, quite missed. The disappearance of the naughty elements had a very peculiar effect. It was as if the world decided it needed more Z's to make up for the loss of Xanadia and Zoom. All of a sudden, new elements started popping up, and they all began with the letter Z. There was zinc and zirconium, which were quite sensible, but then came Zimbabweum, which loved to dance, and Zambium, which hummed cheerful tunes all day long. Zoelium was very, very fast, and Jonglium was very, very wise and old. It was a proper Z party on the periodic table, and Z was suddenly very popular. The most peculiar new element of all was called Zixavutzurk Pomnokigfedikbium. Yes, that's its real name. It was the alphabet spelled backwards. And it was a very confused element. It didn't know if it was coming or going or going or coming. It would roll one way and then immediately roll back the other way. It was completely and utterly backwards. All the other elements tried to help it, but it just got more muddled. It was a silly, mixed-up element, but everyone loved it because it made them laugh so much. Z just patted it on its head and sighed a happy sigh. This Z craze didn't just stop with elements, oh no! Suddenly people discovered whole new languages that all started with Z. There was Zazzle Speak, which was very sparkly, and Zomzom, a language spoken only by humming. There was even Zzz Talk, which was, as you might guess, a very sleepy language. People all over the world started trying to learn them, which led to a lot of funny humming and some very long naps. It was a strange and wonderful time to be alive, as long as you liked the letter Z. And then came the countries. Brand new countries appeared on the map overnight, all with marvelously mysterious and funny names. There was the Kingdom of Zizzle Zazzle, a land where it rained glitter. There was the Republic of Zonk, where everyone wore very large, floppy hats. And let's not forget the United States of Zoodleland, a nation famous for its wiggly, wobbly, pasta-based architecture. The world was changing in the most fantastically funny ways, and it was all because Santa had put 11 naughty elements in a box. It was a world full of Z's and endless surprises. But not everyone was happy with all this Z-ness. The people of the United States of Zoodleland and the Kingdom of Zizzle Zazzle looked at each other over their glittery hills and pasta towers. They missed the old elements, they missed the bouncing of Cesium and the squareness of Quadrilateralium. "This is not right!" declared the King of Zizzle Zazzle, his glittery beard shaking with purpose. "Those elements may have been naughty, but they are our naughty elements! We must free them!" The president of Zoodleland agreed, waving a very serious-looking noodle. So the new countries decided to work together. It was a sight to behold. The armies of Zonk, with their giant floppy hats, marched alongside the humming soldiers of Zambium. They built fantastic ships made of Zoodleland pasta and powered by Zazzle Speak sparkles. Their goal was simple: get to the North Pole and convince Santa to open that box. They called their mission Operation Free the Fun. It was a grand plan, a noble quest, a very, very long trip. The North Pole is, after all, quite far away. The journey was not easy. They faced giant snow slurpees and grumpy polar bears who did not like humming. Their pasta ships sometimes got a bit soggy in the warmer seas. But they never gave up. For 10 long years they traveled and planned and worked together. 10 years, that's a very long time. Children who were small when the mission started were now grown-ups, leading the charge. They learned each other's Z languages and shared their Z foods. They became more than just allies, they became friends. Finally, after 10 years of struggle and adventure, they arrived at the North Pole. Their glitter-powered, noodle-framed fleet stood before Santa's giant workshop. They were tired, they were cold, and their hats were a bit droopy, but they were united. They had faced every challenge together, from soggy pasta to grumpy bears. They stood as one, a whole world brought together by a shared mission. They were ready to face Santa Claus himself, and demand the return of their silly, wibbly-wobbly elements. The moment of truth had arrived. The great doors of the workshop creaked open, and there stood Santa Claus. He wasn't cross or grumpy, he was laughing. He laughed a great big booming laugh that shook the icicles from the roof. "Ho ho ho!" he bellowed, his belly shaking like a bowl full of jelly. "You made it! You finally made it!" The leaders of the world looked at each other, confused. They had prepared for a fight, not for a fit of giggles. They had their serious speeches ready, all written in Zom and Zazzle Speak. This was not what they expected at all. Santa wiped a tear of laughter from his eye. "Don't you see?" he said, gesturing to the united crowd before him. "The elements weren't the ones being punished, you were the ones being taught." He walked over to the shiny box, untied the ribbon, and opened the lid. Out bounced Kessium, out zoomed Zoom, and out sniffed Zanadia, smelling slightly less of old socks. "I saw a world that was drifting apart," Santa explained kindly. "I needed to give you all something to work on together. A silly, impossible goal that would make you friends." The people looked at each other. They looked at their Zoodleland ships and their Zonk hats. They remembered the 10 years of shared adventure. He was right. They had hummed together, marched together, and sailed together. They had become one big, happy, slightly zany family. They had found unity and love, just as the ribbon on the box had said. A great cheer went up across the icy plains of the North Pole. They hugged and celebrated. Santa's plan, as bonkers as it was, had worked perfectly. It was a Christmas miracle in the middle of summer. But just as Santa was about to say, "Ho ho ho," again 2 figures stepped forward. It was Q and Z from the periodic table, and they were wearing tiny police hats. They looked very serious. "Santa Claus," said Z in a very official tone, "you're under arrest." Santa blinked. "Under arrest? For what?" Q cleared its throat. "For unauthorized element napping, causing global confusion and excessive jolliness in a serious situation." They snapped a pair of fluffy candy cane handcuffs on Santa's wrists. Santa just laughed even harder. "Oh, this is the best lesson of all," he roared, as Q and Z proudly led him away.